Hi, everybody. You're listening to Comics and History, episode number 102, part 2 The Curious Case of the Post-Crisis Supergirl continued. And welcome to the show. I am your host, Brian J. Rygate, and class is back in session as we continue our look at the very complex history of the post-crisis Supergirl. In part 1, I took a look at the birth of the post-crisis Supergirl in 1988 and covered the highlights of the post-crisis Supergirl's history for the years 1988 through 1994. And so in this episode, I'll be starting at 1996, going through 2002, and then talking about what ultimately happened to the post-crisis Supergirl, because, of course, the post-crisis Supergirl is certainly not the same as the pre-Flashpoint Supergirl. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with DC history or Supergirl history in general from 2002 onwards, I'll fill you in a little bit there. And then, of course, I'll talk about more recent appearances of the post-crisis Supergirl. Okay, so hopping ahead to 1996, and by this point, the post-crisis Supergirl, in terms of her real-time publishing history, was 8 years old. And yes, a number of DC comics were being collected in trade paperback and hardcover format at this time, but there still wasn't any digital platform for comics. I don't think the trade paperback hardcover market was really as big as it is today. And so in terms of getting stories from even a few years before, wasn't entirely easy. And of course, by 1996, the speculator boom had really broken, and so there wasn't the craze that was driving up the prices of comic books like it was only a few years prior. But still, to go to your local comic shop, you would find that for the most part, shopkeepers weren't interested in changing all the sticker prices on back issues in their collections. And so to get a story like the Supergirl saga, which first introduced the post-crisis Supergirl, could be expensive. As well, by this point, DC had really moved beyond talking about Matrix being from a pocket Earth. It was really time to do something different with Supergirl. Keep her fresh, make it easier for new readers who could not or did not want to go back and read her origin, which came at the end of the John Byrne run. And so DC tapped writer Peter Allen David to launch a Supergirl solo series, which I'm sure had a lot of fans feeling really happy, especially those who read and enjoyed the whole Death and Return of Superman storyline, because that's really where Supergirl stepped up and became an important supporting character. And just in general, Peter Allen David is a pretty great writer. He's someone who comes in and does something new, but he still has a good sense of the history of the characters who he's writing for. And so he definitely wanted to do something different with the post-crisis Supergirl, but at the same time, in an interview, he said that he wanted to bring back certain concepts from an earlier time in Supergirl's publishing history, specifically the Bronze Age. And he wasn't doing any of this to tease fans of the Bronze Age Supergirl or Bronze Age comics in general. None of this was meant to be a spoof. He really wanted to make older readers feel more at home. So during his run on Supergirl, he would bring back concepts of, well, the town of Leesburg, named after Linda Lee, or tying into Linda Lee. He reintroduced the character of Dick Melvern, who was the pre-crisis Supergirl's boyfriend. Dick Melvern showed up during Peter David's run on the title. But most importantly, he brought back the concept of a civilian identity for Supergirl. And the way he did it was really interesting. And he certainly played off what had come prior with the post-crisis Supergirl's history. So in issue number 1 of what turned out to be an 80-issue run of the Supergirl title, Supergirl is flying in the sky, really struggling with her identity. At this point, this was probably her lowest, where she was asking if she actually had a soul. Did she have a life? Did it matter? At the same time, readers were introduced to the character of Linda Danvers, a young woman in her teens who had been brought in by her boyfriend to do things that ran foul of the law. And so she was getting herself in trouble frequently. It turned out that her boyfriend, Buzz, had some demonic ties to him. And it all culminated with him using Linda as a ritual sacrifice in order to bring forth a demon, but also to kill Supergirl. And the sacrifice didn't go off quite as planned. Buzz ran off, but he still mortally wounded Linda and left her on the altar dying. Well, what he did was successful in bringing Supergirl to the altar where she saw this dying young woman and realized that she and Linda Danvers were there because of Matrix's existence, and she felt so badly that this girl was going to die. And so it hit Matrix / Supergirl at this point that she could save Linda. And in saving Linda, it would give her purpose. It would mean that Supergirl had a life because she was giving life to Linda. And so what her plan was to fuse pieces of her protoplasmic matrix with Linda. And she did that. But what happened was that Matrix / Supergirl and Linda Danvers were merged into one being that had the memories of both Matrix Supergirl and Linda. And in the early going, there was a question as to who was really in the proverbial driver's seat. Was this new person primarily Matrix Supergirl, or was she Linda? In any event, this new Linda Danvers Supergirl went home, got herself cleaned up, took count of what was going on now. Now Supergirl, as Linda Danvers, had a family. She had parents. She also realized that she was a student at the local high school, and she realized that she had done, as Linda Danvers, a number of less than pleasant things. she wasn't a psychopath by any means, but she did things that were clearly against the law, and so now she had a chance to atone for that as Supergirl. So this was mutually beneficial for both Matrix Supergirl and Linda Danvers. In terms of the power set, most of the power set was still there. The flight, the super strength, the speed, the telekinesis, but the chameleon power had been largely downgraded to the point where she could only switch between Linda Danvers and Supergirl, and there was another wrinkle in that Linda's natural eye color was permanently replaced by Supergirl's blue eye color. So even when Supergirl morphed back into Linda Danvers, she still kept those blue eyes. And her explanation to her parents, everybody else, was that she was trying something new with contacts. And it made sense. I mean, young people want to make changes to their physical appearance through things like contact lenses or changing their hairstyle. What was neat about the chameleon power, the downgrade chameleon power, was the change in hair color. Linda was natural brunette, Supergirl was a natural blonde, and seeing the blonde hair of Supergirl morph into Linda's brown hair was a neat homage to the late Bronze Age, in which Kara Zor-El had a specially treated brush, which when she ran it through her hair, allowed her to change her hair color from blonde as Supergirl to brunette as Linda Danvers, and vice versa. So, right off the start, David brought Supergirl back somewhat to her more iconic roots while still keeping her a non-Kryptonian Supergirl. Really smart. And I do remember that while sales on the book were not terrific, the people who did pick up the book did enjoy it. And so it's really nice to see that David's run on Supergirl is available on Comixology, because physical back issues may not be so easy to pick up today. And that was the status quo for the Linda Danvers Supergirl for, I want to say, the first 17 issues. And that was around issue 18 where David introduced a change in Supergirl's powers that would have major ramifications for the story going forward. In a battle against Despero, Supergirl expended such a vast amount of her telekinetic power that she actually manifested wings of flame. She also gained flame vision. So also giving her a power that was kind of like Superman's. Superman doesn't have flame vision, but he's got heat vision. So another little tweak there by David. But it was more than just the flame vision that David was going for. This is where the Supergirl run got pretty complex and went in a direction that I imagine a lot of Supergirl fans were not expecting, as this was the start of the whole period in which Linda Danvers / Supergirl was revealed to have been an Earth-born angel, later to be called an angel of fire. And the explanation was that these Earth-born angels were created at a point where two separate beings were fused into one. So, of course, that tied back to issue 1 of Supergirl. And, I mean, it's a good thing that this isn't a spotlight issue or a spotlight episode that I'm doing, because just reading up on what Peter David did from issues 19 through the 50s